Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Health Wealth Podcast. We have a special guest with us this week, Michael. We're going to be hearing about his story, and we've also got Barry here with me as usual. So first, we'll just see, Michael, how are you doing? And welcome to the show.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's no problem. Good to speak to you, Barry. We've both been away on holiday, so the first time we're catching up for a while. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, Ryan. It was a great break. Nice, obviously amazing place. One of my favourite places, Greece, and lots of sunshine, some great food, and got in a bit of exercise. And in between was a great opportunity to get content as well for my course that's in the works. So overall, really good time, and happy to be back, and looking forward to these next up and coming episodes.
Yeah, good. Yeah. We've got a lot of good guests coming up, a lot of interesting stories, which Michael has one. Absolutely. I've read through his story and it's very interesting. So we're going to find out about it today. And let's kind of start at the beginning with you, Michael, which is, I guess for you, the beginning is a nasty accident was the beginning of your story. So do you want to give us some background on it and kind of run us through what exactly happened?
Yeah, so in 2016, I was out with some friends on our motorcycles, and we were going to meet up with one of our other buddies who wasn't on a bike. And I was in an area that I hadn't been in before on the bike, and we went to go get on the freeway, and I was coming around a turn on the entrance ramp, and I guess I was going a little bit faster than I should have been. I don't know exactly what speed I was going, but I started drifting to the outside of the lane. I started drifting to the left, and there was a guardrail right where the lane was kind of starting to straighten out. And I felt that if I continued on the turn that I was going to continue drifting and end up going into the guardrail. So I had to make a split-second decision to avoid the guardrail or take my chance and possibly hit the guardrail. So I cut to the left, avoid the guardrail, and I went over a median. And on the other side of the median was the exit ramp for the highway. And apparently there was a semi-truck coming from the exit. And I made my way underneath the semi-truck. There was two of my buddies on bikes behind me. They didn't see what I did. They didn't see me go off the road, but coincidentally, they ended up doing the same thing. They went right over the road, and one of their bikes, I think, bounced off the back tire of the trailer, and the other one guy just got some road rash on his arm. The other guy broke his thumb. But if I wouldn't have stopped the truck, it's a good possibility that they would have just gotten ran over, because obviously the truck had time to stop for me. They weren't far behind me, so if I wouldn't have stopped the truck, they might not have been here. I don't really have any memory of the accident besides what led up to it. I remember making the decision to bail the turn. And my next memory after that was waking up in the hospital that night and them telling me, I'd been in an accident and wanted me to ask if I wanted to call somebody. I told them to call my dad. So,
yeah, that sounds pretty intense. And interesting that you kind of picked out a positive there, that you potentially saved your friend's life, although it was obviously a bad thing for you, but potentially you saved their lives, and fortunately you were able to also make it through. So when you woke up in the hospital, what was kind of going through your head when you first woke up and they kind of told you what had happened?
I remember telling them to call my dad. My next memory is hearing my dad and the surgeon talking, and I heard the surgeon tell my dad that I might lose my foot. And I remember crying a little bit and telling him, I didn't want to lose my foot. This is all new to me. And they ended up taking me back to surgery and putting a bunch of braces in my ankle, fusing my ankle together, and putting a bunch of rods in my leg. And they didn't take my foot that night. So the next morning is kind of when I started getting a little bit of memory back, but you know, so much time has gone by and I realized how doped up I was the first few days. That I remember bits and pieces of it and stuff, but the first few days, you know, the following morning, I remember telling, you know, that I was in an accident. And my first thought was, I can't be in an accident because I'm supposed to pick up my kids, you know, tonight. I got to get my kids. Like, I can't be here in the hospital. And, you know, the next morning I'd actually woke up and my buddy that we were going to meet that wasn't on the bike, he's a semi truck driver. I worked for a trucking company as a mechanic on him. So his truck was supposed to go to the dealership the next morning and nobody really knew about it except for me. So I called the shop and made sure that, you know, his truck made it to the dealership and stuff. But at that point, I still didn't know, I didn't know how messed up I was. I knew that I hurt my foot and stuff. My arm was sore, but I had no idea on, I sustained multiple injuries. My biggest injury was, you know, tearing up my foot. I broke my collarbone. The surgeon that did my collarbone surgery said it's the worst collarbone separation he ever seen because he could actually see my brachial plexus. Your brachial plexus is your nerve bundle that runs from your spine across your top of your chest and down through your armpit. Well, you can see that nerve bundle exposed. And ultimately, I lost all left shoulder function as well because I damaged nerves going to my shoulder muscles. So at this point, I didn't even know that, you know, my arm wasn't working, but I just assumed that, you know, it was super sore from the accident. The whole left side of my body was like almost a bruise. My arm, my leg, my side. It was just like one big bruise going down. My right big toe, I dislocated my right big toe at the first knuckle. So the knuckle popped out of the skin. They had to pop that back in, sew that up. I fractured the bottom of my skull. So I had to wear a neck brace for like 3 months or so. But the shoulder and my foot was the two biggest injuries.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to have to take in with that. With your what was the verdict with your shoulder? Are you able to use it now, or is it still out of use?
I've got function with it, but I don't have strength. So, you know, I can move my arm, I can lift it up and stuff, but if it comes to putting weight in this hand, you know, and trying to move my arm, it's extremely weak. And compared to not having any shoulder function to what I have now, it's night and day difference. Not having, you know, my arm used to be stuck on my side like this. I mean, I could lift it up on my own, or I could lift it up on my other arm, but moving on my own, it didn't move. It just stayed right here next to my side. And unless it was moved other ways, it stayed there for a year and a half. Because it took 6 months. They want you to wait 6 months to see if your nerves will regenerate. You know, your nerves sometimes can heal themselves. So they waited 6 months to see if they were going to heal, and I didn't get any progress with that. So they went and they did nerve transfers. They actually went into my neck, and it took they call it a fascicle. So if you look at a bundle, you know, you got a wire and it's got all the little strands inside the wire. Basically, one of those little strands is a fascicle. So they took a fascicle from another muscle and they went over, and I think in my neck, they went to my scapular muscles because I lost all external rotation too. So I lost all my deltoids and I lost all of, you know, my shoulder blade muscle. Then they went in my triceps and took a fascicle and connected my triceps to my deltoids. So it took another year or so before I started being able to get any movement just from the muscles, just getting the muscles to fire, start working again. You know, it took a year. So my arm, it took a few years after the surgery to get it functional, and I'm still progressing to this day on, you know, what my arm can do. And, you know, it gets a little stronger, but, you know, when I'm talking a little stronger, holding this water bottle and taking a drink of the water bottle, I've got to like try, you know, it's work for my arm to, you know, hold a pound of weight out from me. But like I said, compared to no function at all, it makes a world of difference. You know, I had a hard time reaching in my wallet if I was sitting in the car or something. I had a hard time reaching to my wallet because I couldn't do this. I couldn't move my arm back to get my hand in my pocket. So I'd be, you know, turning my whole body to try to get my arm. And yeah, the arm is a bigger disability than the foot.
Yeah.
The foot had different issues, but ultimately, you know, I was in the hospital, and I think it was probably around like the 5th or the 6th day. The amputation was on the 9th day. And I remember my dad coming in the room, and he tells me, you know, this isn't something that you're going to want to hear, but, you know, you need to hear it. So the guy, I was talking to your surgeon yesterday, and I asked him, you know, if it was him, what would he do? And he said, I would amputate it. He's going to have far better use of a prosthetic with a faster recovery than trying to save my foot. And what happened with my foot is it got turned like on its side, so the top of it was down, and it just got drug along the ground for like 5 or 6 feet. You can see the blood spots on the ground. So my foot just kind of got ground down on the cement, and the whole top of it. Have you ever seen the movie Terminator, the second one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when they're at I forget the corporation, but they go in the corporation and they get the fake arm or whatever, and there's a scene where he cuts down his forearm and he pulls the skin off his arm, you know, and it's just like that's what my foot looked like. You can see bones and meat, and it's an ugly picture. So they fused my ankle together as well. So I wouldn't have had any ankle function. I'd have had a hobble no matter what. And they had told me that they were going to have to take a muscle out of my back to put on my foot for them to do a skin graft too, because there was nothing for the skin to even, you know, grow to if they would have just, you know, did a skin graft. So and now they're talking about taking a muscle out of my good back to try to save the fucked up foot. And yeah, I was like, we're not going to mess with the back, and I don't want to spend the next year or two multiple surgeries, because it was going to take more than one. There'd be multiple surgeries, and then, you know, I got all this hospital time, in and out, the recovery time, and ultimately I didn't want to spend all this time missing out on my kids growing up. My 2 sons were 3 and 4 at the time, and at that age, you know, 6 months, couple months, a year, that's a long time, and I miss out a lot on, you know, their childhood and being restricted and stuff. So I said, you know what, we'll just amputate it. And, you know, it sucked, but you got to make the best of what you got. And I wanted to move forward as fast as possible. So on the 9th day, you know, they did the amputation. And when I got out of the hospital, I think I was more depressed that I wrecked my bike than I was about my foot, because, you know, I loved riding the bike. I enjoyed the bike. Summer was coming, you know, so I'm like, man, what am I going to do? I was single at the time. All I did is work and ride my bike. So not having the bike was going to be a challenge. And that's ultimately what led me to buying the car. I wanted something fast. So I didn't, I was fortunate enough. The best part about my accident to me is that my kids didn't lose their father. That's the greatest outcome of the accident, is my kids didn't lose their father. And I thought it'd be really selfish of me if I wouldn't got another motorcycle, because I'm not scared to ride one. I would get back on one again, but to risk that again and possibly risk, you know, my children not having their father, I wasn't willing to take that risk again. So I bought the car to make it a little safer for me. My stay in the hospital, under the circumstances, I made the best of it. I had a great time in the hospital. I laughed, you know, tried to hit on all the cute nurses, I made the best time that I could, you know, while I was there, considering that, you know, I broke half my body, and it wasn't an easy time in the hospital, but I made the best of it. And I don't regret my decision for amputation at all. I had met somebody, I met somebody at the gas station locally one day, and he come in hobbling, looked like his ankle was fused. So I can't remember if he mentioned if he reached out to me or if I had said something to him, but he ended up seeing one of my, I think it was one of my surgeons at the hospital that did all my care. That was one of his surgeons, and he was 3 years after his accident, and he had talked about all the surgeries he had been through and all the pain that he was still going through, and he was really considering just amputating it now. And well, I'm glad I didn't wait around 3 years to make that decision, because now 3 years have gone by and he's got to go back to square one. He's going to be where he could have been 3 years ago, still ultimately end up amputating his foot, and just kind of wasted 3 years of his life trying to save something that wasn't savable. So, you know, you can't cry over spilt milk. I woke up to a situation, and I had to accept the situation and go from there with the best mindset that I could, make the best out of it. There's nothing that was going to bring the foot back. There's nothing that's going to change the accident. So to me, there's nothing to be depressed about. I put myself in a situation, there's an outcome to it, and now I've got to live with it for the rest of my life. Make the best out of it for the rest of my life, and yeah, stay positive.
Yeah, the mindset, I think with anything, mindset's a huge thing, and I can tell from the way you talk and the decisions you made during it that you have a strong mindset, a positive mindset, and that's clearly helped you through with recovery. And you know, even with taking the decision to amputate your foot, which, you know, we can't even begin to understand how it would feel to have to make that decision. You know, you've looked at it from a positive view and decided to make the best of it, which is exactly the right thing to do. So during that time when you were in hospital, you know, you said you enjoyed yourself, but it was still hard. Did you, you know, mentally, did you struggle with some of it, or did you manage to kind of have that positive mindset the whole time through it?
I took each day by each day in the hospital. I didn't think about what my life is going to be like now, without having a foot. I took each day. You know, it took a couple days when I was in there before they did my collarbone surgery. So that was one of the first things they had done after the night of the accident is when they did the surgery on my leg, and they fused my ankle and did all that. And then a few days later, they did my collarbone, and you know, we didn't even know about my arm until probably around the time of my amputation, because my arm was super sore. It felt like Mike Tyson punched me in the arm. And I had asked them for, you know, I think they started putting a lidocaine patch on my arm, you know, and then my physical medicine and rehabilitation doctor had come in to talk to me about prosthetics, because I think this was before my amputation, but they come to talk to me about what I could expect from prosthetics. Once they knew that I was considering amputation, they come and, you know, talk to me about it and stuff. And I told my doctor, I didn't really know him very well at the time, obviously, but I'm like, you know, my arm won't move. And he says, well, what do you mean your arm won't move? It won't move at all. He said, well, you might have nerve damage. So that's when they started looking into, they've got a brachial plexus clinic, which specializes in brachial plexus injuries. And, you know, so they got me set up with that. Each day was the daily task, though. You know, the first week I was in there, I didn't eat very much. Narcotics, they dry you up. They stop your, you know, your bowel movements and all that. So many days, my body was so weak to where the first probably week that I was in the hospital, I couldn't get out of the bed at all. I couldn't really, it was all I could do to put my leg over the bed and put it on the floor to support myself to pee in a cup. So the first 10 days or so, try to eat some food, deal with the pain of the day, whatever. I had family and friends coming to visit me, so I tried to eat a little bit. I can recall multiple times where, I was laughing, smiling, having, the best possible time that I could, appreciating, the people being there for me. And I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about what I was going to miss or, what life was going to be like out of there. My focus was to get out of the hospital and get back to normal as fast as I could. And I knew that was going to be a long recovery, but I've got a picture of me leaving the hospital in a wheelchair, just smiling from ear to ear. And one of my friends on Facebook had actually, commented on, sharing that picture. He said something about, you can tell a lot about my personality by the smile of that picture. Even leaving the hospital, I didn't leave the hospital sad and depressed. And I was glad. I was only in the hospital for 16 days. I got released because I was going to have 24-hour care. Even once I got home, progress to me was getting out of a recliner and getting on the floor and getting back up off the floor and getting back on the recliner. And I just took every day, each day, what progress could I make for the day. And once I could accomplish something, it took me a few days to be able to get out of the chair and back into the chair. And it was accomplishment to get off the floor and get back into the chair. So the next day, I'm going to get in and out the chair a few more times. And I used a walker. I didn't have a wheelchair. Well, I had the wheelchair, but I didn't really use the wheelchair. So I went everywhere on the walker. And I didn't realize how much I hated the walker until, sometime after, and I had to use the walker again. And like, man, I don't know why I didn't use the wheelchair for so much of that.
That's a great attitude to have that I think you can have across all life, in a bad situation, definitely, but across all life, taking things day by day and just being like, okay, this is what I'm going to achieve today. And then tomorrow I'll decide what I'm going to do tomorrow. I think that's a good attitude to have overall, because often people mess themselves up thinking too far ahead and thinking about this and that and worrying about things that never happen. So, I think you approached it with the perfect mentality, which is probably what helped you to, it seems to me that you've done a very good job of recovering from it and moving on with your life. And obviously, as you said, your meeting with that guy in the gas station kind of reinforced that point that, if you'd have took the wrong decisions and maybe had a different mindset, you could have ended up like him 3 years down the road and not really got anywhere. So I think the way you approached it definitely will have helped you with a lot of that. So once you did get back home and kind of started your recovery, what was that journey like? Obviously, I'm imagining it was kind of slow, but was there any things that kind of helped you along the way with that?
The first couple months were really slow. The first couple months were slow, and they were actually kind of hell, because when I got home, have you heard of phantom pain or nerve pain?
Yeah.
So phantom pain is feeling, something that's not there anymore. And they go in and cut muscles off your nerves and stuff. Your nerves aren't happy. So when I got home, a huge battle was the phantom pain and the nerve pain, because my leg would just have like these electrical sensations all day long. And I'd feel my foot and I could feel my toes were hurt. And then, just these burning sensations and then like squeezing sensations. And the only thing you could do for that kind of stuff was to focus your mind. And I love music. So once I found, I didn't find the music right away. I was looking into other forms of therapy and how to control the phantom pain and stuff. And one of the cool, interesting ones that helped some was they call it mirror therapy. and it's taking and putting a long mirror down your leg, putting it between your legs, so that when you look at the mirror, you see the reflection of your other foot. And all of a sudden your brain is happy. The brain's like, oh my God, there's the foot. There's no more pain. And you had to really believe, you had to look at it and be like, oh, wow, there's my foot for it to work. Because if you see it and you're just like, yeah, that's not my foot, it doesn't work. But if you can believe that that's your foot, the brain was happy. The brain seen a foot, the eye seen a foot, we're good. But it didn't, that wasn't a long-term solution. I couldn't just sit there and look at a mirror all day. But I found that if I could occupy my mind, I wouldn't sit there and have all the sensations. So I'd put the radio on and, I'd rock out to some music and stuff. That would provide me some ease of, all the phantom and nerve pain and stuff. It took a few months for the medicine that I was taking to start blocking all those sensations. I was also in a neck brace, so I didn't do a whole lot. I'd move about the house, go to the bathroom. I spent a lot of time in my recliner. Spent a lot of time listening to music. I got caught up in the news. It was like a real life soap opera. I couldn't believe it. I never sat there and watched the news with like political stuff very much. But then the whole Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, it was like, a soap opera. So I watched a lot of that. And it was about a month after I'd been home for about a month. And I went outside. My uncle was outside with me. I was in my wheelchair, and I lit the grill, and we had one of the smoking, you pour the grill in, you pour the charcoal inside of it. Instead of using lighter fluid, you just stuff some paper in the bottom, you light it up, it smokes the charcoal, So I had one of those sitting on top of the grill, and it was in October. So I was trying to get a little bit closer to the grill to get some heat off of it. And my wheelchair ended up rolling. It turned on me because I only had one wheel locked. So I was sitting on a slight incline. The wheelchair started turning on me, and my one leg was underneath the wheelchair, and my arm didn't work, and I ended up hitting the grill. I couldn't do it. The wheelchair started rolling. I couldn't do anything. So I ended up hitting the grill and falling out the wheelchair. I knocked the charcoal over while I was, falling down. And then I remember looking and seeing all the charcoal was right in front of me. I had a blanket sitting on my lap. I was on my right side. My left side didn't work. And I'm laying there. My uncle was behind me when all this happened. He had just turned around to throw something away. So I fall out the wheelchair, knocked the grill over. I got all this hot coals in front of my face and shit. And I'm like, oh, Uncle Darren, help. And I never felt so helpless in my entire life, just staring at these hot coals. And I just kind of waiting for somebody to get me away from the coals, But when I fell out the wheelchair, somehow I caused an injury to my knee. My left knee stopped extending all the way straight. I couldn't extend it, past like 45 degrees, if that. So for a few months, when I got home, was hardcore therapy. I had a therapist, a physical therapist, and an occupational therapist, both come into the house. And we would try everything to get my leg to start extending straight again. And it just wouldn't go. I mean, you could try to force it with all your might, and it just wasn't going. So I ended up having to have a forced manipulation where they knocked me out and they forced my leg straight. It took like 4 or 5 people, like an hour of pushing on my leg to get my knee to straighten out. I had to sign a waiver that, my leg might possibly break before it straightens out. And my surgeon was like 230 pounds. And, he said it took him a good 20 minutes at the end pushing, with all his weight to get my leg to straighten out. I got a leg brace, a brace that had a spring in the hinges to help try to straighten it out before the surgery. That didn't work. So that's why we ultimately had the forced manipulation. Well, I ended up taking that leg brace, and I used that to make my first prosthetic out of it. Me and my dad's a carpenter. So we took the brace and the leg spindle from a table. And I had got, it's called an iWalk, and it's a hands-free crutch, and it's a crutch that straps to your thigh, and you can, walk with the crutch through your knee. Basically, you got a straight leg. You don't have a knee, but you can walk with it without having. I didn't use crutches because of my shoulder injury. So we ended up taking and putting this spindle on the brace, and then putting the foot from the eye walk onto the spindle, and I made my first prosthetic leg. My prophetess, which is the guy that designs the legs and stuff, he wasn't very happy about it because we used at the end of the brace, we just used a big screw and ran it right through the brace and into the leg. But the end of my leg was right above the screw. So if something happened to the brace, it's potentially, the head of the screw could have poked my leg, caused more injury or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I was tired of waiting for a prosthetic leg. I was tired of using this walker. So me and my dad, we made a leg, and I didn't get my first prosthetic for like 6 months. I didn't walk for 6 months. So needless to say, I was eager to walk. That's why we ended up making the prosthetic. There was a time when I was still in a neck brace that we had a nice day. We had a sunny, nice fall day, and I was so tired of being cooped up in the house. I bought my kids a small four-wheeler a few months before the accident. So my sister was staying with me at the time, and like, well, you guys can ride a bike. I'm going to ride this four-wheeler. So here I am riding around the neighborhood in a neck brace, got no foot, riding around in a kid's little mini ATV. And it just felt so good to go outside and get some fresh air and actually do something, because I was finally, for the first time in a few months, I could do something. I could get out the house. I could sit on a four-wheeler. I could ride around the neighborhood. So it was a whole bunch of little wins. I'd spent a lot of time crawling around on the floor during the days. I'd put music on and I would crawl around on the floor. And it was after my surgery that I started doing, I think, a lot of the crawling, because with my arm, if I was on my hands and knees, my arm would vertically, gravity would hang it straight. So, there was no way I was getting it off my side, but if I was bent over, gravity would let it hang to the ground. And it was all I could do to get my arm to move. When you're crawling, you got to take that next step. It was all I could do to get my arm to move forward just enough to put my weight on it to take the next step with my hands. So I spent months crawling around the house until I could have progress of actually reaching and crawling, versus I'd go like this and kind of swing my arm to get it to where I needed to be. Spent a lot of time crawling around on the floor. I did swimming. I swam, for a year and a half, 2 years, a few times a week. Swimming gave me a lot of mobility. I could move my arm a lot easier in the pool than I could outside of the pool. It was a very long process for my arm. But, ultimately, I think that my kids had a huge part of me staying positive. And if I was 50, 60 years old and I didn't have no kids at home, I probably would have tried to save my foot. But being as I had kids to keep up with, the foot's got to go. We don't have time to, try to save the foot. Might come, a few years later, I missed it all out and still got to go back to square one and cut the foot off and start over again. They were a huge part of my motivation.
Yeah, that's true. I think having something, a purpose almost is has a huge impact on things like that. Like you said, having that, that thought of your kids and having to live for them probably did have a massive impact, because everyone needs some kind of purpose. And, if you, after having the injury, if you didn't have the kids and you felt like there wasn't anything for you to live for, that, you could have had a completely different mindset and outlook on it. So I'm sure that they did have a huge influence on it. How was it on them as well to obviously see you in the way you were, having to recover, and obviously having to be told that you'd had the accident? How did they take it? How was it on them?
They were 3 and 4 at the time, so they didn't fully understand. They kind of knew when I got home that, lost my foot. They come and see me in the hospital just a couple times. I didn't want them being at the hospital a lot. I think they knew that, you know, I amputated the foot before I come home. But them being so young, you know, of course, they felt bad. They could understand that, you know, I lost my foot. They were too young to have deep, you know, thoughts about it. They were just glad that Dad was home and I was able to, you know, do whatever I could do for them. And they tried to help me out a little bit. They also took advantage of me because for the first 6 months, they didn't listen for nothing. I'd tell them to do something, they would just run away. Nope, he ain't coming. We're good. We ain't gotta listen. Then once, you know, I kept telling them when I get my leg, oh, it's on. It's on like Donkey Kong when I get my leg. We're getting you guys back in check. And there was a time they took my leg from me. They thought that was pretty funny. So coming from the kids, you know, I couldn't help but laugh about it. But they were right at the age of understanding, but not truly understanding. And they just kind of grew with me. You know, they seen my progress as I could make it. And they understood, you know, sometimes when I couldn't be as mobile as I wanted to be, they understood, you know, I was suffering and stuff. I think all in all, they took it really well. You know, sometimes I think about them if, you know, people are always asking them questions, you know, about your dad and his leg. And, you know, some of my kids' friends, you know, I go to the school and, you know, they tell me, oh, you got a robot leg. I think it's cool or whatever, stuff like that, you know. So it's different. It's been a little bit different on everybody. I truly feel that the whole situation, the whole accident was supposed to happen. And part of it, I haven't exactly figured out why. I'll probably never figure out exactly why. I think there's multiple scenarios that can play into it. One of them being that, you know, I possibly might have gave up a foot to save a couple lives. So I'm completely fine with that. You know, I would give up the foot to save my buddy's life. Again, if I had to. There's been many, I'll tell you some of the things that's happened. It's really ironic. So the first one, a few months after the accident, my cousin sent me a message and he's like, hey, you know, your mom's on YouTube. And sends me a video. What are you talking about? My mom's on YouTube. So he sends me his video and some friends of his, they go on bike rides and they film it all and they've got a YouTube channel and stuff. So the night of my amputation, my mom left the hospital and she stopped at a gas station. And she seen there was like, I think 5 younger people on bikes at the gas station. So, you know, she was all upset for me just having the amputation and stuff. So she went over to talk to them and, you know, just tell them to be careful. She had no idea that they were filming for YouTube. So my cousin ended up seeing the video, recognized, you know, my mom sent the video to me or whatever. So I told my mom. And she reached out to, you know, she found the video. I sent her the link of the video and she reached out to the owner of the video and they started talking and stuff and they wanted to come meet me. So we had set up, I'd got communication with them. We set up for them to come out one night and, you know, they come over and had a pizza with me one night. So I was talking to, there was a couple guys and a couple girls. So I was talking to one of the girls and I was describing the night and the accident and stuff. And she looks at me and she says, I dispatched your call. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I work for the, you know, the ambulance company as a dispatch that took you to the hospital. And she's like, now that you're describing it to me, I remember your call. She's like, I dispatched your ambulance. Wow, that's crazy, you know? So we'll back up a few months for another story. It was about a month or two after the accident. I was sitting in the hospital waiting for an x-ray. And there was an older couple sitting there waiting for an x-ray that looked like they had been into a motorcycle accident. Wife was in a wheelchair. She had lost her leg above the knee. Her husband was on crutches. He had a tore up arm. So, you know, we started talking and they were in a motorcycle accident. About a month later, I was at the same place waiting for x-ray, same hospital, and I seen the same couple. So we started talking again. And she looks at me and all nonchalant, she's like, my brother-in-law was the driver. And I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, last time when you were telling me my story, when as soon as you said there was 3 bikes involved, she's like, I already knew that was you. So her brother-in-law, her husband's brother, was the driver of my accident. So now I've met I've met the person that has dispatched my call. I've met a family member of the driver of the accident. Come springtime, my buddy that we were going to meet that wasn't on the bike. The day before my accident, me and him were riding, and he was trying to keep up, and he dropped his bike. So the only reason that we were at the place that we were at the next day is because he dropped his bike the day before. So come springtime, most of us that rode together, none of us had bikes anymore. We all wrecked our bikes. So he was the only one that had a bike. He got his bike repaired throughout the winter from, when he had dropped it the day before. Come springtime, he was out one night downtown in Detroit, and somebody cut him off. And he ended up, I think, hitting the side of their car, but his bike slid over to the side of the road. He hit a curb or whatever. He had got some injuries. When I was in my early 20s, I had a Avalanche, the truck. Are you familiar with the Chevrolet Avalanche? So I had one of those that it was kind of a big part of my life because it was the first real investment that I had being an adult. I had a good enough job that I was making decent money, so I went and bought a nice lifted truck, and I put a killer sound system in it. And the truck was part of my early 20s. So when my buddy had his accident, the only person that stopped to check on him was a guy driving an Avalanche that had a prosthetic leg. And I'm just like, all these little things are just, it's too much just to consider it all a coincidence. My dad, he's experienced some foot problems over the past few years that one day might lead to amputation. And I also wonder, was this battle to, possibly help my dad as well, that he's seen what I've gone through, stayed positive, life is still life, it wasn't the end of the world. So if it comes to the time where he's got to make the decision to amputate, he's going to have a much stronger mindset of his battle after seeing what I've gone through and maintaining positivity. And he looks at us, how could I ever complain? I've seen what you've gone through. I've never seen you complain. So I certainly haven't, wouldn't complain. And part of my journey is getting to the point of having the osseointegration that I have, which is the implant that my leg attaches to. So if he was to get amputation, he would go straight to osseointegration. He wouldn't need to go through, I went through years of pain and suffering, being in a socket, trying to get comfortable and trying to be mobile. I got around decently, but there was a lot of pain involved. Putting pressure on certain spots in my leg would just cause terrible nerve pain. I gained, at the time of my accident, I was 160 pounds. When I had osseointegration done, I was 220 pounds. So my mobility was severely limited. And, I was saying that my dad, he was struggling walking. He's got blood vessel issues in his foot. So he started losing muscle volume on his foot. So when he'd walk on it, he'd be putting pressure on the nerve and causing the same nerve pain, that I would deal with. And I asked him one day, is this the quality of life that you want to have? And he's like, after he thought about it for a while, he's like, no, this isn't a good enough quality for me. And if the time comes where quality keeps getting worse, he's more willing to go to amputation to have a better quality of life than what he's got now.
Yeah, I agree. There's, as people talk about, higher powers or, the universe guiding us and different things, like maybe it was meant to be that that was meant to happen, like you say, that it's going to now help your dad. You know, you meeting all those people is just, you know, that's just crazy when you say it, like the chances of that happening. And like you say, perhaps, you know, it was meant to happen, and there's positive things that are going to come from it, and the way that you look at it is the best way to look at it, like that. And it's, you know, sometimes things like that, there's so many coincidences that, like you say, you say, well, that can't just be chance. You know, there's got to be some kind of divine purpose behind that, as to you having an accident. As you say, I mean, you saved your friends, 2 of your friends' lives with it originally. Then with all the other things happen, the benefit that it might give to your dad too. So looking at it with the correct mindset, there's a lot of positive that can obviously come out of it. Obviously, you went through a lot of suffering, which is not a great thing, but you've learned from that, and you seem to have stayed very positive throughout it, which, as I say, seems to be one of the reasons you've dealt with it well. And I know you mentioned earlier your car, so let's jump onto your car and how you got into that, because that's another great achievement that you achieved in your recovery.
So like I said earlier, the car, summer was coming up here in January of 17. Well, summer's coming up. I don't have a toy. I need something fast. Don't want to get the bike. So when I bought my bike, it was actually, I was going to get, you know, the same body style Camaro that I have, or I was going to get a bike, and I couldn't afford the Camaro at the time. So I got the bike, and I started looking into the cost of the car. Well, we don't have a bike payment no more. I don't have bike insurance no more. If I pay off the daily, that's all the money right there to pay for the car. So I started looking for one, and I found one out of state. I had my dad go drive it with me, like I said, because I couldn't drive it. I took a walker, but it's a manual transmission. I didn't have a foot to push a clutch in. I knew that regardless, I was going to drive this manual transmission car. I didn't have a foot yet, but regardless, we're going to make it work, because I'm not buying an automatic for, you know, the race car / toy. And actually, I didn't even buy it as a race car at the point. I just wanted, you know, consider a luxury performance car. So I got the car, and the first time I tried to drive it, I had my dad drive it over to like a college parking lot, and said, well, let me try to drive it in the parking lot. I drove it around for, I don't know, just a couple minutes before security kicked us out. Well, you can't drive in here. And I'm like, all right, we're good, because I've already established what I came here to do, which was to try to drive the car. And I feel confident enough now that we're going to go out on the road. So I took it out on the road, and I literally drove the car for like 12 hours straight, because I drove around for a couple hours with my dad, went and dropped him off. He did whatever he was going to do, and I was too damn excited. I didn't do anything for 6 months. So now that I could drive the car, that's all I did. I drove until like 3 o'clock in the morning. I actually went and picked up one of my buddies, went downtown. I did some street racing with it. I got beat up by a little 4-cylinder, but he kind of knew what he was doing, because I had street tires on it. He knew the kind of power that the car was going to make, and I was just going to spin my tires. And that was the first time for me driving the car. So of course, you know, I just spun the tires and everything, but I had a great first night. And so, you know, one of the problems I had was my foot placement on the clutch pedal, because normally you're using, you know, like not your toes, but the end of your foot by the toes to push the clutch in. Well, not having an ankle, I couldn't do that. So I had to use the heel of my foot to kind of stick my foot up in the dashboard a little bit and use the heel to work the clutch pedal. So one of the first things that I wanted to do with my prosthetic was I needed an ankle, because I needed an angle to properly, you know, drive the car. So I got a hydraulic foot, which is actually the foot that's talked about in the one article at the track, because the hydraulic foot, you could adjust the resistance of how easy or hard it pointed and how easy or hard it come back. So when I would take it on the track, I would make it really hard for it to bend this way, but I would make it really easy to bend this way. And the foot won't stay in position. If you adjust it, no matter how tight or loose you have it, it will start to float. So if you put pressure on it, it's eventually just going to float, slowly back to this way. So over, however long it would take, a few minutes on the track, and my foot would start going like this. I'd, put my foot down, I'd strike the heel, and I'd tilt the toe back like that. And it worked out great. But the foot is heavy. Being a hydraulic foot, it's heavy. And being dead weight, it makes it even heavier. So I would go out on the road course for, like 20 minutes at a time, and I would hang my foot above the clutch pedal the entire time. I wasn't going back and forth. It was too much to find the pedal, make sure that my foot is in the good spot on the pedal. So I would just hover it. And, so that got really tiring, holding this heavy foot up for 20 minutes, driving around the track. And I ended up taking my first foot, and we just put an angled hardware piece on it. So I had a lighter fiberglass foot that held a permanent angle that didn't float on me. I started using that on the track. That worked out great. But even having your leg hanging like this and a prosthetic that attaches here, that's floppy at this point. And I would wear like a silicone sleeve. I'm sure you might have seen that goes over the prosthetic, and then the sleeve rolls up, to your leg to kind of hold it on that way. That would help keep my leg, the prosthetic part of my leg, straighter in the socket, but that ultimately still wasn't the right answer. My leg would get all sweaty, and my leg would start flopping around inside the socket, and, all sorts of discomfort. I had seen osseointegration through Facebook groups over, the couple of first years of the amputation, which I thought was really cool, having your prosthetic attached directly to your bone. But I wasn't sold on the procedure yet. There's risk involved, now you got a rod sticking out your leg. Of course, there's risk for infection. So I was aware of the surgery and really interested in it, but ultimately I wasn't sold on it yet. And then I seen a somewhat local, he's in the same state as me. I seen a video of him playing lacrosse, and watching him run across the field. If you didn't see that he had a prosthetic leg, you wouldn't have known that he had a prosthetic leg. I mean, he ran great. And I was like, that's it. I should be able to move like this, because I couldn't. I could run, 20 feet, and that's it. There's so much pain in the back of my leg from impacting and stuff that I just couldn't run. So once I seen that gave me the motivation to reach out to a surgeon about the procedure. I reached out to his surgeon, which his surgeon has done the most below knee procedures in the country. That's the guy that, I wanted to go to. So I reached out to him and made a consultation appointment. And, I was a good candidate for the surgery, so ended up having the osseointegration done, and it's been a life-changing procedure. One of the best decisions that I've made throughout life. Night and day difference. There's no comparison. I'm not limited by amputation anymore. I can go all day long without pain. There's no nerve pain from it. I don't have phantom pain from it. At the end of a long day, if I've got to stop and sit down, I can't walk anymore, I'm too tired and my body's sore, it's anything but my amputation that's stopping me. It might be my toe that I mentioned on my right foot, where the scar is. It develops a callus over time. So, that part will start being sore to walk on, or my hips might be, sore from walking, but it's anything but. I don't stop and take my leg off, and I got to take my leg off and give my leg a break. That doesn't happen anymore. So I've been in, I can walk as far as I need to walk now. Before, I was limited on my walking. I could go so far and I've got to stop and take a break. I take my leg off and take some pressure off the nerves. The longer I gave it a break for, the longer I could go. when I put the leg back on. So if I'm on my leg for an hour and the pain builds up and I got to stop and take the leg off, if I take it off for 5 minutes, I might be able to go another 5 minutes before the pain starts building. If I take it off for 20 minutes, I might be able to go 20 minutes. But now there's no pain to stop me or limit me. I used to wake up every day and take a wheelchair to the shower and sit on a chair, go to bed in my wheelchair. Come the evening, I'd take my leg off and it wasn't going back on until the next morning. So every day I started in a wheelchair, I ended in a wheelchair. I sat in the shower. Now I wake up, I put my foot on, walk out of bed. It takes all of 5 seconds, if that, to put my foot on. I walk to the bathroom. I walk to the shower. I've got a leg that I use just for the shower. So I stand up and take showers now. I hated sitting down. I was so tired of sitting down, taking a shower after a couple of years. That, to be able to walk into the shower again is a great experience in itself. So I walk to bed. I walk out of bed. Honestly, I don't care about amputation anymore. I don't care about it. There's not a day that goes by that I think, I wish that I had my foot back. Would it be nice? Sure. It's not what I think about at all anymore. I don't complain about it. I don't take what you got and make the best of it. Even before my osseointegration, I had the same mindset. I would get irritated. Making legs was not fun. Designing the socket. Obviously, I wasn't the one that made the changes to the socket, but I'm the guy telling them, where the pain's at. And I don't miss making sockets because a socket would take me a couple months to design. An hour appointment, maybe once a week, every 2 weeks or so, maybe, go test fit it and make adjustments to it, and multiple appointments to get it comfortable. And then finally you get it comfortable. Then when they make the socket, from the time you started to the time you actually got the leg to put on, 2 or 3 months have gone by. Your leg has changed. So when you get the leg, your leg's not the same leg that you were putting in it before they made it.
Yeah, you sound like you from this incredible story, Michael, that you had a strong idea of perspective. You had perspective before the accident, in terms of having that positive mindset. But did this kind of even reinforce the sense of perspective even more in terms of what it is that you had great in your life and everything you had to look forward to? And also, you mentioned about small wins as well. How did you feel those small wins adding up in the course of your recovery?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of wins come from my arm. It didn't go from being stationary to being able to pick it up, in a couple of weeks. It took a couple of years to make this progress. So, one of the first things that was a win for me was being able to, oh, look, I can pass this now. I can reach over and I can pass that, because before, I had to pass it or do something like that. When I got into the pool, I couldn't reach my arm over the top of my head when I first started swimming. And a lot of the exercises in the pool were stretching. I'd get floats, so I'd just hang there and, kind of let my arm just be stretched out. Stretching was a whole aspect in its own. The muscles not moving, they tense up, and it was a job in itself, just getting all the muscles in my arm and my back to stretch out. So not only did I not have the function, but once I started getting function, my function is limited because my muscles are tight and they don't want to stretch. So every time I'd accomplish something like in the pool, being able to get my arm forward a little bit more to pull me that way. Every time I accomplished something like that, if I couldn't do this yet and I finally started being able to do this, well, within the next few weeks, I can do more and more and more until I'm finally in the pool swimming like this and not flopping my arm over and if I got my arm up to here. Well, now that I got up to here, a couple days later, I'm getting it up to here. 2 months later, I got it all the way up to here. So it was small win over small win every time.
Yeah.
Not even just the arm, my prosthetic. I'm a mechanic. So when I got nuts and bolts on my leg and stuff, you can believe I'm going to play with them. And my leg guy, he already knew that, I'd be dabbling. I was honest too. If I made a change to it or something, I'd let him know. But there's a lot of amputees that they need an adjustment. They've got to make that appointment. They got to go have somebody else adjust it, hope that their adjustment works for them. You got all this time involved. You might need an adjustment if you change your shoes. If you got a shoe that's got a big heel on it or something, it's going to change the way you walk. So you might need to adjust your leg a little bit. And I got to the point I started doing my own adjustments because I would leave and I would walk and I could feel, okay, the foot is angled this way a little bit. It's pushing me this way a little bit, or, it's pointed too much. And I started making little adjustments, and I would only make a small adjustment at a time. That way, if it was going the wrong direction, I could easily go back to where I was. I wouldn't get lost and need to go back to the doctor for a complete adjustment. But so I started making adjustments and finding what worked for me, what made it more comfortable for me to walk. And if I needed to make a change, I could make a change. I think that's a lot of one, I had the confidence. I'm a mechanic. I can build an engine. Of course, I can adjust a foot, so learning that aspect and what to do, how to adjust it, what ways to adjust it to accommodate, what goal you're looking for. There's been a ton of wins. It was all little wins. There was recently I've thought about, there was a time after my surgery where bench pressing a plastic vacuum, you got your vacuum hose extension, your little plastic tube, bench pressing that was progress. I couldn't do anything before, and having, I'd have to use my wrist to kind of, I don't want to say guide. If my arm isn't very strong, but my hand is holding something that this hand is holding, I can use my wrist and work my arms together that way. So I can hardly bench press a vacuum cleaner hose. And I think it was just last week at the gym, I haven't tried to bench press since that vacuum hose. All the work I do at the gym, all the exercises I do, they're all on machines because my shoulder doesn't have the stability to pick up a free weight. If I'm trying to do a bicep curl, my shoulder doesn't have the stability just to hold my arm in place for me to work on my bicep. I'm trying to I put this on my arm and, put something heavy in your hand and reach out, and your arm's going to be all floppy trying to hold what you're doing. I'm fighting for stability, let alone working when I'm supposed to work. So last week I decided to try to bench press, and I already knew it wasn't going to be much. And here I'm thinking of being, when most people, you see me physically, you don't see my arm damage. They see my arm moving around. There's no thoughts of, my arm being damaged. So here I'm a young grown man going to attempt to bench press an empty bar. So I laid down on the bench and I could bench press the empty bar. Okay, well, let's put a little bit of weight on. I put like 30 pounds on the bar. And a lot of my exercises at the gym, I'm limiting my right side because I want some type of symmetry. I don't want to look like the Hulk on the right side and Bruce Banner over on the left side. So the weight is determined by how much my left side can do. My right side could push a little bit harder, but even if I put too much weight on it, even though I got my right side pushing, it's still stressing my left side more. So I kind of let the left side lead, how much I can handle. And I was able to bench press 30 pounds. And I did, a few reps of them. I've done it this was last week. So a couple days ago, I did my second round of bench pressing, and I went through 3 sets at 30 pounds plus. I think the bar is only rated for 25 pounds at the gym because the machines are never the same as free weights. So, Olympic bench press bar is 45 pounds. I think the one at the gym says 25 pounds. So I'm looking at like 55, 60 pounds, which, for a grown man is terrible. But for me, bench pressing 60 pounds right now is fantastic. The last time, there's a point in my life where bench pressing a plastic vacuum hose was progress. And that's how I have to look at it as, that was progress. There was times where I couldn't do that. Crawling around the house was progress. Getting up and down to the chair was progress. A whole bunch of little wins. And
yeah, that's incredible. Just the way that you describe that, because we take a lot for granted, and through your story we're able to see what we do have, and that we shouldn't take these things for granted, and also the fact that if you have a goal, in your case it was reaching to recover as much as you possibly could, and to be able to do as many of the things as you used to do, even achieving something small like lifting something that was 30 pounds that you couldn't lift anything at all, but then you started to build up to that showed that was, even though it was just 30 pounds, it was progress. And you have to look at the glass half full instead of half empty. So I think the way that you've described that in your story is just incredible.
I never realized how I took walking for granted until I couldn't walk, because just the ability to walk makes life so much easier. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're going to the kitchen to make a sandwich, or you're going to use the bathroom, or you're getting up to grab the remote to change the channel on the TV, walking is a huge, something that everybody takes for granted, and you don't realize it until you can't walk. And, I've had this discussion with my dad. If it comes to having my arm back or my leg back, if we took the prosthetic leg out of the equation, okay, if I didn't have the option for a prosthetic leg, it was either no prosthetic leg or have my leg back or have my shoulder back. I would have to choose my foot. And I would say that just because, I've experienced both. I've not been able to walk, and I've had a shoulder that don't work. And just the ability of walking provides me a much easier quality of life than having an arm that works. And sure, you could take a wheelchair around everywhere and, have your arms and stuff like that, but just the ability to walk versus being in a wheelchair, life is so much easier when you can walk. I mean, to get up before, getting up, getting my kids ready for school and stuff, using a walker, it's a task just to complete your task. There's a separate task on top of the task that you're trying, at hand. And over the past 7 years, I've spent 9 months not walking.
Yeah.
So the ability to walk is really taken for granted.
Definitely, and that's really, that ties in with the whole aspect of freedom and being able to go from A to B. If you can't walk, you can't go from A to B. Sure, it would be great to be able to use your arm, both your arms, but I totally agree in terms of the walking. It signifies that ability to be free and make your own choices about going somewhere for the day. Amazing.
Yeah. It affects a lot. When you're having a hard time walking, you don't want to go out to a lot of places. You stay home more, you do less. Nobody wants to go out you want to go out to the movies? No, it's a struggle to walk into the movies. I'd rather just sit home and watch the movie,
For sure, yeah.
Yeah,
it makes you appreciate, so I see people that are in worse condition of me, bilateral amputees, quadruple amputees, and above knee amputees, arm amputees. And they've got it so much worse. How can I sit here and complain about losing a foot when you got people that ain't got no feet, no arms? You see others accomplish more with less, and it really humbles you to, you know, I'm fortunate for what I have.
Yeah,
I agree. It's
absolutely.
people take so much for granted, like you said, and you know, like you say, we take being able to walk for granted. We take being able to use both our arms normally for granted completely until you lose it. You through your story, you've had incredible achievements of the things you've done. Even, you know, whether it's just being able to lift your arm higher, you know, with basically one arm and one leg, you're able to drive a manual car around a racetrack. Like, that's a crazy achievement. What, looking back across your whole journey so far, could you pick out one achievement that you were maybe the most proud of, maybe made the most difference to you?
I'd probably have to say my attitude. I mean, that's an achievement in itself, is having a positive attitude. And next to the attitude and mindset, there's not been one. I'm a mechanic, so I'm good with improvising. You know, sometimes you don't have what you need, and you figure out ways to make it work. So I've done a ton of improvising throughout the years that I don't have the mentality. There's some things that I physically can't do that I've just got to accept that I need help with. When it comes to building stuff, you know, we bought a house, did an addition on it. I can't do most of the work. I physically can't lift you up a piece of plywood. You know, I don't have the strength. So attitude is a huge achievement. I can't really, I don't think besides that, I don't think I could pinpoint one big achievement, because it's been so many small achievements. But the biggest picture is the journey started with my attitude.
Yeah,
I've spent a lot of time after the accident. I started getting on Facebook. I didn't even know of Facebook groups at the time. So once I found out there's Facebook groups, you know, I found some amputee groups, and I would go in there and realize how negative so many people are, and how something, you know, like amputation can just destroy their life. They feel that their life is, you know, over, and it's not. I had gotten to I've been kicked out of a few amputee groups, not for, you know, just being a rude, negative person, but for being an honest person. You know, I had a guy that was talking about how and then, you know, his foot was his best friend. And I'm like, dude, if your foot was your best friend, you've got far bigger issues than amputation. Okay. So let's just start with that. And you got people that were, you know, in an accident, they had amputation, you know, due to somebody else. Somebody else caused a motor vehicle accident, and, you know, they got amputation. Oh, why me? Why me? I don't know why you, but what is this doing? Is getting on Facebook and complaining every day. Is your foot going to come back if you complain enough? No, it's not. So why are you sitting here just complaining every day? And, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Okay, you can't accomplish it this way, so accomplish it another way.
Absolutely. I love that answer. Attitude. That's a great answer, that your attitude was your greatest achievement. And from hearing your story, from hearing the way you talk now, the way you answer every question, I can tell that you've had that attitude through the whole thing. And the best thing people can take from your story is that makes a huge difference, that with your attitude, no matter what negative situation happens, you can still achieve, you can still do things that you want to, and it will make a huge difference having that positive attitude. And that's the shining message I take from your story, because it's so obvious talking to you that you've had that attitude throughout, and that it's just made such a huge difference to where you are today. If you'd have had a different attitude, there's no chance that you'd be doing the things you're doing today.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so at all. And when I was in the hospital and my dad had the conversation with me that he had in the surgeon with the surgeon about the amputation, I don't even think it took 10, maybe 20 minutes. And I said, okay. I mean, he mentioned, the quality of life and blah, 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 and the faster recovery. And I just sat there quietly thinking, like, this is not what I want to hear today. I don't want to hear about cutting my foot off. But it kind of seems to be what needs to be done. So I kind of thought, just like I'm looking now, I thought about it and I said, okay, fine. It is what it is. It sucks. I don't prefer it to be this way, but what am I going to do about it? Nothing. So cut the foot off and let me get on with my life.
Exactly. That's it. Wherever you are in life is where you are. Whatever the situation is right now, that's what the situation is. And all you can do is move forward from it in the best possible way. And that's exactly what you did. And there's a lot of people that get in those kind of situations and they don't do that. They're looking back and they're negative. Like you said, with all those Facebook groups, I can imagine it. We talk a lot about health, and I'm in a lot of Facebook groups where we, try and give people advice on health. And I see it there as well with all these people with these negative attitudes around stuff. And, you can't change what's happened. You can only change your future. And you seem to have done an absolutely great job of doing that.
I try to encourage others to do the same. I've encouraged one particular guy to get osseointegration. He's struggling in a socket. I met him in a car group. I met him in a group for trailblazers. So I seen he's an amputee, and I reached out to him and gave him my experience on the whole osseointegration procedure, and he ended up, having it done. It's probably been a year and a half or so now. Anytime I'm out in public, if I see an amputee, I let them know about the osseointegration. I was at a steakhouse standing in line one day a few months ago. It was probably like a year ago. And there was a younger guy, and he was an above-knee amputee, and I'm trying to talk to him and stuff. And he's there with his mom and maybe his sister, maybe his girlfriend. I don't know. But he's there with his mom, and ironically, another ironic situation to the story is his prosthetist, the guy that built his leg, is the guy that built my leg. The prosthetist, he actually left the facility he was at to go teach at a different facility to teach people that are becoming prosthetists. So this young gentleman, he didn't even know that the prosthetist is Darren. He didn't even know that Darren left. So I'm like, oh yeah, Darren left like 2 months ago, because he hasn't had a leg made in a couple of years. So he didn't even know that, well, now you got to go find a new leg guy, start that whole process over. You got to develop a relationship, with your prosthetist. You guys got to get to know each other and, know what works or whatever. So he's got a whole new journey on that. But so I'm telling him about the osseointegration, and the line starts moving and stuff. So, okay, go ahead and enjoy your dinner or whatever. And while we're standing there in line still, I can hear his mom talking to him. Oh, what about infection? What about this? And just all this negative, what if? And I could see when he's walking how his hips are out of place, and what a struggle he has walking. And I truly hope that he took my advice and researched it for himself, and not have his mom up in his ear about going to get hurt. What if this? What if that? Your mom doesn't know. I can relate to you. I know what it's like. I was aware of the risks. The reward far outweighs the risks that you get. So, it bothered me to sit here and hear his mom. For one, I'm telling him how positive this surgery has been, how life-changing this surgery has been to me. And all she can focus on are the what if, the negatives. What if you get an infection? What if this? What if that? Okay, what if? What if you don't get an infection? What if it changes your life for the better, quality that you've had since you've had amputation, And I've recently gone back on Facebook. I left the amputee groups. I think I stayed in a couple of them, but I stopped following them. I stopped talking to them just because I was so tired of all the negativity. So I recently got back in there, and the amputee community is a very strange community because one, they're a lot of them are extremely bored. They don't have a life now. So this guy they'll ask questions like, oh, when you go to when you park your car and there's a handicap spot available, do you take the handicap or leave it for somebody that, might be worse than you? Why are we talking about this on Facebook? And I wake up and, just see depressing posts and, whining about amputation, how bad their life sucks. So I make a post and I'm like, what are you guys all depressed about? Honestly, what is there to be depressed? Is your depression helping you? No, it's not. So then I've got people coming at me that are, oh, it's okay to be depressed. And, depression has helped me get through, my battles and blah, blah, blah. And they're hating on me for being positive and not, I think there's 3 types of amputees. You got the amputees that come into the group that just want hugs and kisses. They need encouragement from others, and they got to give everybody a pat on the back. They need their pats on the back. And then you've got amputees that think that they've accomplished the world. They think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread because they went outside and raked the lawn, and now they got a video record them raking the lawn with their prosthetic leg and share it to everybody and show everybody that you can still rake the lawn with a prosthetic leg. And then you've got people like me that are just like, go about your life. Don't let amputation control your life. Stay positive with it. Don't be depressed and move on. Okay. You're amputee. Great. Okay. Move on with your life. Don't let it absorb. There's so many people that let it absorb their entire life. Like their life just becomes amputation.
Yeah.
And I've refused to let my life, there was a lot of my life that, over the first few years was dedicated to the amputation. I had, a lot of time I had to dedicate to recovery to get to where I am, but I never once let it control my life. My life isn't amputation.
Yeah. It's a shame that you have people like that in all walks of life where they just look for the negative and that, they refuse to take responsibility for their situations and to move forward and be positive. But I mean, it seems to me from hearing your story from all these different, chance meetings, or whether they're chance or whether they're, part of some kind of divine purpose, but you seem to be helping a lot of people. And I'm sure you're going to go on to help a lot more by sharing your story. You are, a shining example of how you can deal with it positively and how you can still continue to have a life and to achieve. So I think, I encourage you, I'm sure you're going to keep sharing your story and keep sharing your message, because it's going to have a positive effect on a lot of other people's lives. And it seems you've already helped a lot, and I'm sure you're going to continue to help a lot of people with that.
Yeah, definitely. It makes me feel good knowing that other people can look at my story and my situation and apply that to their life and better their life based off of, what I've given them. Because the guy that went and had osseointegration, he had no idea about it. He never knew. He's not all up in the Facebook groups living his life for amputation. He's living his life outside of amputation, dealing with amputation. So he had no idea. And yeah, it felt really good for me to be able to change his life, because it is a life-changing procedure. And he's come back to me multiple times and thanked me for bringing this to his attention and encouraging him and ultimately helping him make the change to make his life better. And
absolutely,
yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's brilliant. And hopefully someone's going to hear your story from this podcast or see your story, and it's going to have an effect on their life too. Hopefully someone is going to see it who's maybe in some kind of situation that is similar, that they can relate to, and it's going to make a positive effect on their lives. So thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing it. It's inspired me as well. I'm sure Barry feels the same, that, you know, we take things for granted that we shouldn't. And, you know, that's inspired me to keep pushing forward and really appreciate the things that you've got. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on here.
That's all right, no problem. It's always a pleasure to share stories like yours, which hopefully are going to encourage people to better themselves and better their lives. So that will do us for this week. We thank you so much for coming on. Thanks again, Barry, for being here. We will see everyone again next week, and let's get optimal together. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the show. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover on the podcast, or you'd like to appear on it, then please contact us at hwpoduk@gmail.com, on our website, which is healthwealthuk.com, or on any of our social medias, which are at hwpoduk. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share it with all your friends and family, and we will see you next week.